Today, because we have our altar of community remembrance here, we won't have the children come forward because there's not really space. And so everyone can be in their seats today. Our story this morning comes from Denmark. In a small, cozy, snug cottage, far, far in the north, there were 4 children that lived with their grandma. And she was very, very old, and she loved them very much and took really good care of them. And one day, a visitor arrived at the door. That visitor left his scythe outside the door so he wouldn't scare the children. But when they opened the door, they knew who it was. It was Death. They were upset and scared and frightened and sorrowful, but they said, well, okay, come on in. And then the oldest boy said, oh, I know what I'll do. I will trick Death, because if I can just keep him busy until dawn, I know he'll go away, because night is Death's only friend. And so he said, would you like some coffee? And of course, Death likes his coffee strong and black, so he said, sure. So he kept bringing more coffee and more coffee and more coffee and more coffee. And then Death said, oh, I've had enough coffee. And he put his bony fingers over the cup. And then the littlest child looked up at Death and said, why are you here? Why does our grandma have to die? And Death said, I understand. Because, you know, we think Death has a hard heart, but Death is actually very compassionate. And he said, let me tell you a bit of a story. This is a story from so long ago, I'm the only one who knows this story. You see, there were 2 brothers living down in the valley, and their names were Grief and Sorrow. And they only lived down in the valley, and they never looked up. They were just stuck down there in the valley. And there were 2 sisters who lived up on the mountaintop, just like right up here. And they loved running through the meadows of wildflowers and enjoying the blue sky and the fresh air. But they knew something was missing. They couldn't feel their happiness entirely, but they still enjoyed their time up there. Well, as you might expect, one day the brothers and the sisters met. And Sorrow, by the way, the sisters' names were Joy and Delight. So Sorrow and Delight see each other and fall instantly in love. And Grief and Joy also look at each other and fall instantly in love. They had a wonderful double wedding, and they built houses halfway up and halfway down the mountain so that they could experience the fullness of life, all the joy and sorrow and all the delight and the joy. So the littlest one again looks up and said, well, that's a story, but what does it mean? And Death said, without death, what meaning do we have in life? Really, we need both life and death. Just like we can appreciate the sunny days when we have rain, and we can also appreciate the beauty of the day when we've lived through the long night. So the children still weren't 100% sure what all that meant, but in their bones they knew that he was right. And then Death got up from the table and started walking toward the stairs to go upstairs to where Grandma was. Well, one of the children goes, no, no, don't go. But the oldest child said, oh, but it is time. It is time for us to move on. Life must move on. Death must move on. And so Death stole up the stairs and into the room with the grandma and opened the window. And then in a voice between a whisper and a cry said, "Fly, fly, soul, fly." The children rushed into the room, and indeed, the grandmother had died. They looked at Death and they said, "Oh, our grandma is dead now." And they started crying. And he said, "You have a heart. Your heart will cry, but it will not break. It will not break, but it will be sad. It will grieve. It will cry." And then Death left them. From then on, whenever they opened the window, they thought of her soul leaving through the window. And when they felt the breeze, they felt her presence with them. And the children grew and got to be grown-ups and mixed their joy and their sorrows together, just like Death said they would. And they felt comfort because in their heart they knew that they could cry, but that their heart would not really ultimately break. I must admit to you that as I grow older, autumn becomes more and more poignant for me. The brilliant bursts of color delight my eyes, and I drink in the cooler, crisper air while savoring the lingering warmth of the blue sky afternoons. And yet my enjoyment feels tempered by the reality that these same scarlet and gold leaves will soon fall and wither, making way for winter and the new leaves of spring yet to be born. Such is the way of life, of course, but it feels perhaps more personal these days as I wonder about my own time on Earth. Now, as a typical baby boomer, I keep fighting to say, no, this is late midsummer. It is not fall yet. Surely not the autumn of my life. Yeah, I think baby boomers are saying that when they're like 93. Maybe we'll get ready to say, maybe this is autumn now. And perhaps it is. But one thing I do know is this, that our annual cycle of life in this temperate zone mirrors the pattern of life as a whole, not just in the reality that we are born, we grow, we live, we die, but rather that within our lives we experience grief and healing, and more grief and more healing, many, many times over in many, many different ways. And so I wonder, what does it truly mean to heal a grieving heart? The poet Robert Frost once felt moved to pen a very small poem about this, about our reality. This is what he said. "Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay." Now Frost tells us, of course, what we already know. Nothing gold can stay. Nothing of whatever form can stay, including people, including the ones we love so dearly. We are all destined to live and to die. We're all destined to grieve over and over again. We know this. We know this, and yet our hearts ache, and sometimes they ache with unbearable pain from the sheer weight of the losses that we're facing. And yet we also know this, that our time here on earth is filled with beauty, unspeakable beauty in every season of life and season of the year. wherever we wander on this planet. Our Dene neighbors have a prayer that lifts up this deep reality that they say as part of their regular morning practice, their spiritual practice. Translated into English, it says, "Beauty is before me, beauty is behind me, above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I'm surrounded by it, I'm immersed in it. In my youth I am aware of it, and in my old age I shall walk quietly the beautiful trail. In beauty it is begun, in beauty it is ended." I truly believe that we do walk in beauty every day. And in times like these, when I'm grieving for a variety of things, including a nation that seems to have lost its way, part of my daily spiritual practice is to photograph beauty, to capture its essence through my own eyes, and to then share what I found with others. I do this on Facebook and Instagram. Beauty grounds me, putting me in touch, not only with awe and wonder, but also the paradox of a world filled with so much amazingness and so much pain. Much like the Danish story about death, where sorrow marries delight and grief marries joy, our lives are completely intertwined with these deep realities. We're bound to be feeling all of these things deeply. And the fact is, we never truly heal from grief. It's not possible. And perhaps it's not the point. It's not the outcome that's healthy. Now, there's another poet, Albert Hofstadter, who struggles with this and explains it well in his poem called "The Cure." He said, "We think we get over things. We don't get over things, or say, we get over the measles, but not a broken heart." We need to make that distinction. The things that become part of our experience never become less a part of our experience. How can I say it? The way to get over a life is to die. Short of that, you move with it. Let the pain be the pain, not in the hope that it will vanish, but in faith that it will fit in. And be then not any less pain, but true to form. Because anything natural has an inherent shape and will flow towards it. And a life is as natural as a leaf. And that's what we're looking for, not the end of a thing, but the shape of it. And so, I wonder, what shape does your grief take right now? How is it shaping your life right now? How is it blessing you as you feel the interplay of beauty and grief, and joy and sorrow and delight all mingle together? For the true healing comes in seeing it all, reflecting in how all these realities are present in your life, feeling new shapes take form over time as your grief shifts into fresh patterns, in fresh forms. So let your grief shape you. Let beauty flow into you, flow into your being and shape you. Just last Sunday, a week ago, I was exploring the ancestral Pueblo dwellings at the Hovenweep National Monument down in southern Utah. I was immersed in the beauty of the desert landscape, savoring the clear fall sky, seeing sleeping Ute mountains, and marveling at the stunning architecture and very precise masonry before me, created by people over 800 years ago. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, grief for my own father welled up in me. He would have loved to visit there, appreciating the craftsmanship of the ancients. And so he was with me for that time, as I walked in beauty and walked in grief, suddenly missing a father who has been gone now for 11 years. And I experienced it all in a fresh new form, a beautiful form, and also one sorrowfully poignant. During these days of remembrance, let your grief shape you. Let the beauty flow into your being and shape you. And feel the healing that rises up to touch you in subtle and unexpected ways. This is life. This is death. This is our path. Walk it in beauty until the end. May it be so.